there are many kinds of betrayal. Some come like thunder, loud, shocking, impossible to ignore. Others creep in, quietly, disguised as ordinary choices we justify to ourselves. Elena had worked at the same architectural firm for 12 years. She was steady, dependable, the kind of person who stayed late without complaint and remembered everyone's birthdays. People said she had a good heart, which, she realized one day, often meant someone who won't say no. When the firm began preparing for a major city renovation project, the kind that could change careers, Elena poured everything into it. She stayed long after others had left, sketching designs, running simulations, checking cost estimates. It was her idea to integrate green spaces into the urban layout, to make the city breathe again. Her supervisor, Mark, had always seemed supportive. He'd often say, "You're the backbone of this team, Elena." She'd smile at that, not realizing that sometimes praise is a cushion before the fall. The morning of the final presentation, Elena sat in the boardroom, her hands trembling slightly with excitement. It wasn't just pride she felt, it was hope. The kind that says, maybe they'll finally see me. Mark stood at the front, confidently clicking through slides. But as Elena watched, her chest tightened. Her designs, appeared on the screen. Her green space integration, her layout, her ideas. And yet, her name was nowhere to be found. Mark spoke of his vision for sustainable architecture. The words stung like shards of glass. Each compliment from the executives landed like another quiet wound. She didn't say a word, not in that moment, not even when the firm won the contract. That night, Elena sat in her car in the empty parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel. Betrayal didn't always come in grand gestures, she thought. Sometimes it was in the silence that followed, the way the world moved on while you sat still, wondering how you became invisible in your own story. She drove home to a quiet apartment. Her teenage daughter, Leah, was studying at the kitchen table. "You look tired, Mom," Leah said, glancing up. "I'm fine," Elena replied automatically. It wasn't true, but she said it the way people do, out of habit, out of exhaustion, out of fear that speaking the truth would make it too real. A few days later, her brother called. He needed money, again. It wasn't the first time, and Elena had always helped. Their parents had left little behind but old debts and unspoken regrets, and somewhere along the line, she had become the one who fixed things. "Elena, just this once," he promised. She hesitated this time. "You said that before, Dan." "I know," he said, his voice thick with guilt. "But I'm really in trouble now." She looked around her apartment. The unpaid bills, and felt the familiar tug of guilt. The kind that whispers, "You're all he has." So, she said yes. Again. And in doing so, she betrayed herself once more. Weeks passed. At work, Mark received recognition for the project, even an article in a trade magazine. He didn't mention her contribution once. Around the office, people congratulated him. Elena, a coworker, said one afternoon, "You must be proud to work for such a visionary." She smiled politely. "Yes," she said, though she felt something inside her tighten, a quiet anger, growing roots. That night, she walked alone in the city. It had rained earlier, and the streets shimmered with the reflection of streetlights. She passed a park, not one of her designs, but it reminded her of what she'd once dreamed to create. She sat on a bench and took out her phone. She opened a note she had written months ago, the beginnings of her own proposal for an urban renewal project. She'd never finished it, always telling herself it wasn't the right time, that she didn't have the confidence or connections. Maybe betrayal, she thought, isn't just something others do to us. Maybe it's also the way we abandon our own potential, one small excuse at a time. The next morning, Elena walked into Mark's office. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "I need to talk to you about the project," she said. He smiled. Sure, Elena. Everything okay? No, she said simply. It's not. For the first time, she told him everything, how she felt, how he'd crossed a line, how his actions had consequences. Mark's face shifted from surprise to discomfort to defensiveness. Look, he began, it was a team effort. It wasn't, she interrupted. And you know it? There was silence. Then she stood up, her voice steady. I won't work under someone I can't trust. She turned and left the office, her heart pounding, her hands trembling. But this time, the tremble wasn't from fear. It was from release. Elena didn't quit right away. But she stopped pouring herself into a place that drained her spirit. She began looking elsewhere, applying for grants, reaching out to small firms that valued creativity over hierarchy. She also stopped enabling her brother. The next time he called, she said gently, Dan, I can't keep fixing things for you. You need to start fixing them yourself. He got angry. He hung up. But a month later, he called again, not to ask for money, but to tell her he'd found work. And little by little, Elena learned that boundaries are not betrayals, they're acts of self-respect. Months later, she found herself standing in a community hall, presenting her proposal for a local eco-redevelopment project. It was smaller than the city contract Mark had stolen, but it was hers. When the committee approved it, she didn't cry or cheer. She just felt still, deeply, quietly whole. That night, she sat on her balcony with a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker like small stars below. She thought about betrayal, how it used to feel like the end of something. But now, she saw it differently. It was the beginning of truth. Sometimes, she realized, betrayal teaches us who we can't trust, and sometimes, it shows us how much we've ignored our own worth. We betray ourselves when we silence our truth to keep the peace, when we stay loyal to people who have long stopped being loyal to us, when we carry everyone's burdens but our own. The real healing begins when we stop betraying ourselves, when we start living in alignment with our own values, even if it means walking away. Elena smiled as the evening breeze carried the distant hum of the city. Somewhere, in an office she no longer belonged to, Mark was probably preparing another presentation. But that didn't matter anymore. Because the greatest revenge, she thought, is not anger, it's integrity. The quiet kind that no one can steal, no matter how many times you've been betrayed. Betrayal often begins where self-respect ends. The most important lesson isn't how to stop others from hurting you, it's how to stop giving them the power to do so. Every betrayal holds a hidden gift, the opportunity to reclaim yourself.